This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Ethiopian military denies targeting civilians in airstrike that reportedly killed 56 people. South Africa's ruling party, ANC, marks 110th anniversary amid divisions. And Somali president and PM disagree over a return of confiscated UAE funds. Hello and welcome to Africa Live. As always, great to have you with us. I'm Richard Nta, live in Nairobi. And for those of you joining us from across the continent and around the globe, we thank you for joining us. Let's take a look at other stories making headlines this hour. Cameroon counts down to the start of this year's Africa Cup of Nations. Once again, welcome to Africa Live. Let's begin in Nigeria, where at least 140 people have been reportedly killed in the northwestern state of Zamfara. Witnesses say that as many as 300 gunmen on motorbikes conducted raids in multiple locations from late Tuesday to Thursday night. They also report that the attacks were carried out in the form of burning down homes and opening fire on residents. Up to 9 communities were said to have been targeted. However, no group has claimed responsibility for the hits. The number of casualties is yet to be confirmed by authorities as the search for more bodies and the assailants continues. Well, Nigeria has officially designated criminal gangs blamed for mass kidnappings and displacement, especially in the country's northwest, as terrorist groups. The move is expected to give the government the power to take tougher action against gangs locally known as bandits under the country's terrorism prevention law. CGTN's Deji Badmosi has more on the story.
The designation follows the issuance of an official gazette, which labeled activities of 2 bandit groups in particular and other similar groups in the country as terrorism and illegal. Security experts say the labeling of bandits as terrorists will now allow the military to deploy some of the equipment like the Tucano jet bombers the country acquired from the United States not long ago.
There are terms and conditions for the purchase, and that is tied into the Foreign Assistance Act of the United States or the Arms Export Act. You know, all these are tied into it, whereby you cannot buy something from America and use it on civilians. You have to use it on either terrorists or military. With this thing being gazetted now, I think we are open to dealing with them because those equipment that the military has just got are very, very precise and then can be very, very helpful in fighting these terrorists.
The Nigerian government has confirmed it has now obtained clearance to deploy the Tucano jets against bandits who have been ravaging particularly the northwest of Nigeria. Bandits have been blamed for several killings, sacking of hundreds of communities, mass kidnappings for ransom, including school children, among other crimes in Nigeria's north. The latest action of the government is one of several measures it has adopted to keep the situation in check.
We will need to have firm political will and political action, political will and political action at the highest level. Otherwise, these are just cosmetics that we are talking about. The banditry war, the kidnapping, anti-kidnapping, and the terrorism war is a huge business.
This is the last year for this very government, you know, and I think the president, from the recent interview that he has, I think he's really ready to make sure that they do something about this before he leaves office. He has said it many times that he does not want to live in disgrace. So this is one of the reasons why he came into power. And I believe that this being the last year, he's going to use all the might available to him to see if we can have a headway in the northeast and northwest.
There have been concerns over the possibility of civilian casualty in the deployment of the Super Tucano bombers. Even the U.S. government has warned its Nigerian counterpart to ensure their use complies with international norms and is in line with the UN Charter. The Nigerian Air Force is giving the assurance that it will comply with all the rules of engagement in deploying the aircraft against bandits now designated as terrorists. DG Bademasi, CGTN, Lagos.
In Ethiopia, an airstrike has reportedly killed 56 people and wounded at least 30. Reuters news agency is quoting two aid workers who say the strike hit a camp that houses internally displaced people in the northern region of Tigray. The country's military says no civilian targets have been hit. The government also previously denied targeting civilians in the 14-month conflict with Tigrayan forces. Well, we are now joined by CGTN's Guru Chala from Addis Ababa with the latest on the reported airstrike in Tigray. Guru, welcome to the program. What are the authorities saying about the airstrike?
Richard, as you've said, these airstrikes and drone strikes have been several times reported, more specifically by TPLF force and their spokespersons, more particularly Getachew Reda. This time around, they've been claiming hundreds of people have been affected, death and also wounded because of these airstrikes, and they've been claiming that Ethiopian authorities have been targeting civilians, and this time around also refugee camps. But the Ethiopian authorities we tried to speak to, they say that first of all, this kind of airstrikes are calculated and they are undertaken in order to perhaps affect those TPLF areas which are intended to perhaps disrupt the peaceful activities of the central part of Ethiopia and those borderlines in the Amhara regional. So whatever airstrikes and drone strikes we are conducting, they are intended to attack strategic military locations, and there is no intention of affecting civilians. And this time around, whatever airstrikes or drone strikes they have been referring to, if they have taken place, they have been hitting targets which we have intended to do. That's according to the Ethiopian National Defense Force. But still, the TPLF force are claiming that civilians have been affected. This is the kind of claim that has been made several times before. As you remember, so many airstrikes since perhaps the Ethiopian army decided not to enter to the Tigray regional state. Continuous airstrikes have been reported from the Tigray regional state. Drone strikes at the same time, but then again, although TPLF is claiming that civilians have been affected, the government remains to be in the same thought that whatever we are doing, we are trying to affect any establishment against the sovereignty and the territorial integrity and the constitutional order of the country, not civilians, because these are our people. So we have to wait and hear, by the way, Richard, to hear from the official statement of the government. But then again, what I just said is their statement from the officials that we have heard.
Well, Groom, your points are well taken. That leads me nicely to my next question. How will the latest developments impact efforts towards the upcoming national dialogue?
So, first of all, a background, Richard. The national dialogue is a replacement, if you like, of any negotiation that has been proposed by the United Nations, the U.S. government, and also anyone who has been pushing between the Tigray regional state leadership, now TPLF force, which went rogue, by the way, against the constitutional order of the country, and the federal government in order to resolve the ongoing conflict peacefully. At the moment, we can report that there is no serious fighting going on, both in the Tigray, Amhara, or Afar regional state, as government forces have pushed the rebels away, and they are now back in their stronghold, the Tigray regional state. So everyone is expecting the peaceful resolution of this conflict, and the government's proposal is to solve it with an inclusive dialogue. And the latest development for that is to release prisoners. Maybe we've been reporting this as well, that prominent opposition leaders have been freed from prison, including Johar Mohammed, Bakara Garba, and even founders of the TPLF force. The government is saying that this is intended to successfully conclude the upcoming peaceful conversation between parties in Ethiopia, so that peaceful resolution can be found, not war. So this latest development of releasing prisoners have been appreciated by the UN, African Union, the United States at the same time. So this has paved the way, but we have to wait and see, Richard, in the next perhaps a few weeks, this dialogue, when it begun, if it can deliver the intended result or not.
Yes, indeed. Guru Chala, thank you so much for that update and report. Staying in Ethiopia, the government has released prominent political prisoners, including opposition leaders from the Oromo ethnic group and members of the rebel TPLF group. Now, in a statement, government said the move is intended to ensure the success of the upcoming national dialogue. Here is CGTN's Gurung Chalo once again.
This was the much anticipated move of the Ethiopian government, and as expected by many widely known opposition political leaders, are now freed from prison. Jawar Mohammed, Bakara Garba, the two prominent Oromo politicians, and Richard Nta, another leader of the Addis Ababa-based politician, are out of the maximum security prison on Friday night. Many others listed under their file are also out of prison. The freed opposition party leaders were jailed following the assassination of the famous Oromo singer Hachalu Hundessa in June 2020 and were facing justice after being accused of inciting violence. On the other hand, among the freed are former TPLF leaders, including its founder Richard Nta. This move particularly was unexpected as the issue in the north with the rebels remains to be unresolved. These releases are said to be a new chapter in the history of the nation's politics. In a statement, the Ethiopian Government Communications Services Ministry said the government has pardoned all of these people to assure the coming national dialogue intended to resolve many seeking issues of the nation can be concluded with success. Many, including the US and the United Nations, have welcomed and appreciated the move of the Ethiopian government. Gurung Nta, CGTN, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
You're watching Africa Live. We'll see you on the other side of the break with more news stories. Do not go away. Here's what's ahead. Tanzanian President Samia Suluhu Hassan reshuffles cabinet. And South Africa's ruling party, ANC, marks 110th anniversary amid divisions.
So this is it. I'm just about to be shot.
The little tents here, bottles are being thrown. As they do so, we
there are
have
about 3 critical bridges here in Malawi. That's one of them. We're going to cross that bridge.
As you can see behind me, police forces
who are replying with gas. Gas just came in.
Gas. So it's all begun now.
Divisions leading the charge into West Mosul have brought us here.
Just got to be careful here with some gunshots.
This is where most of the fighting has been concentrated.
is the front line now after 9 days of fighting.
We're about 2 to 3 kilometers from
Within
the front
clear
line.
view of this front line position.
Welcome back to Africa Live. Thanks for sticking with us. Tanzanian President Samia Suluhu Hassan has reshuffled her cabinet. This comes just days after she hinted at the move in order to let go of those who said they were eyeing the 2025 general elections. New appointments include the Minister of Sports, Culture and Arts, the Minister of Education, Science and Technology, and the Minister of Agriculture. The latest shuffle is President Hassan's second in 1 year following earlier changes made in March 2021. South Africa's governing ANC party is celebrating its 110th anniversary. The celebrations are referred to as the January 8th Statement. The ANC January 8th Statement is used to chart a way forward for the year ahead. ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa outlined his party's priorities for the year at the old Peter Mokaba Stadium in Polokwane in Limpopo province. And in an address during the birthday celebrations, Ramaphosa said the ANC needs to accelerate economic recovery and ensure that social services are provided to all citizens. Ramaphosa also said the country has in recent years experienced actions that have the effects of subverting the country's constitutional democracy. This includes the recent fire that tore through the Parliament building in Cape Town and the deadly July riots sparked by the jailing of his predecessor, Jacob Zuma. The celebrations come as the party is dealing with an image that has been battered by internal squabbles and corruption allegations in its ranks. Well, as the ANC celebrates 110 years, CGTN's Robert Nagila gives a brief background of the party.
The African National Congress was formed on January 8, 1912 in Bloemfontein. Its goal was to defend the rights and freedoms of Africans. In 1919, the ANC led its first major campaign against movement passes in Transvaal. Passes controlled workers' movements and where they could live to make sure there was enough labor for white farmers and mine owners. The following year, it supported a militant strike by African mine workers. In the 1920s, government policies became harsher and more segregationist. In 1944, the ANC Youth League was formed. Its leadership included Nelson Mandela, Walter Sisulu, and Oliver Tambo. They based their ideas on African nationalism. They introduced a program of action calling for strikes, boycotts, and defiance, adopted by the ANC in 1949. In 1959, a minority group within the ANC, known as the Africanists, broke away and formed the Pan-African Congress that is today a political party. On 30th March 1960, the ANC was banned by the apartheid government and a state of emergency declared. A year later, in 1961, the ANC took up arms against the government. And in 1985, the ANC called on township residents to make townships ungovernable by destroying the black local authorities. In February 1990, the government lifted the ban on the ANC and other organizations. In 1991, Nelson Mandela was elected president and Oliver Tambo elected national chairperson. In April 1994, the ANC won the first historic elections with 62.2%. On the 10th of May 1994, Nelson Mandela was inaugurated as the President of South Africa.
Diplomatic relations between Mogadishu and Abu Dhabi took a new shift on Friday after Somali Prime Minister Mohammed Hussein Roble apologized to the United Arab Emirates for the seizure of close to $10 million in 2018. The money had been confiscated at Mogadishu airport by security agencies. The Prime Minister also promised to return the funds, but just hours later, the directive was turned down by the Somali president. Mohamed Kahie reports from the capital, Mogadishu.
Prime Minister Mohammed Hussein Roble said his country is ready to open a new page in restoring bilateral relations with the Gulf state after two Arab League members' ties worsened following the April 2018 incident.
I want to assure our brotherly state of the United Arab Emirates that we have the money that was seized and we are ready as a government to give it back any time for collection, and we are very sorry about what happened and ready to open a new page.
In a new twist, President Mohamed Abdullahi Farmajo ordered the governor of the central bank not to release $9.6 million. In a statement, the office of the president said the money in question posed a threat to nation's security and the stability of the financial systems in the country. The diplomatic analyst applauded the gesture by the Prime Minister Mohammed Hussein Roble in mending relations with the United Arab Emirates, but suggested other channels could have been employed.
It was a great move to restore relations with UAE and its other allies such as Bahrain and Saudi Arabia, who were not on good terms with President Farmajo's government. It was recommended for the Prime Minister to resolve the contentious diplomatic matters that resulted in the tensions through other mechanisms such as cabinet meetings.
Somalia and the United Arab Emirates enjoyed a strong diplomatic ties cemented by the founder of UAE, Sheikh Zayed Sultan Al Nahyan, but the relationship soured in 2017 after Somalia took a neutral stand following the Gulf diplomatic crisis. Ahmed Kahir, CGTN, Mogadishu, Somalia.
To Kazakhstan, where the president has dismissed the Deputy Secretary General of the National Security Council from his post following days of unrest. Demonstrations which began last week were initially in response to rising fuel prices. However, the situation escalated and resulted in the deaths of dozens of protesters and some security forces. Earlier, President Tokayev declared January the 10th a national day of mourning. Officials say the country's public utility charges will not be raised until at least July of this year. Meanwhile, ex-leader Nazarbayev has called on everyone to unite under President Tokayev. Members of the regional peacekeeping bloc CSTO are sending troops to quell clashes at Kazakhstan's request. Now, earlier we talked with Frederick Emmerich, an assistant professor of Chemep University, on the phone in Almaty.
They aren't reporting exactly what he's allegedly done. There have been some reports of things that have happened that he could potentially have been involved in, but for example, there was a report that before the airport was taken by the mob of people, that somebody had ordered the security forces in the airport to withdraw. And similarly, there have been reports of similar orders having been given to police during the riot. So that may be, but beyond that, the government is not saying. The big bodies of combatants, if you will, have mostly been cleared out. Many have been arrested. There are small pockets of people here and there. There are still people in buildings around us, or they seem like maybe single individuals firing shots occasionally through the day and night. So it's still not safe. We're still here in the center of Almaty, basically under instructions to stay inside, and few people go outside during the day, and there's a curfew overnight, so nobody can go out at night. But things have calmed down quite a bit.
And we're not done just yet. We've got your sports news coming up after the break. Here's what's ahead. Cameroon counts down to the start of this year's Africa Cup of Nations.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Nta, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival, and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference. How would you create your legend? On the fields, on the tracks, in the arenas of Africa. Were you born to be a player? Could this moment be yours? Sports Scene. Find your game.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome into Sport on Africa Live. Let's talk a bit of football. West African nation Mauritania has arrived in Cameroon for the Africa Cup of Nations that kicks off on Sunday. Mauritania are in Group F alongside Algeria, Mali, and the Gambia. Mauritania failed to make it out of their group stage at the AFCON debut in Egypt 2019. And interestingly, they also had Tunisia and Mali in their group then. Mauritania coach Didier Gomez de Rosa says his team is in good shape ahead of the Africa Cup of Nations Cameroon 2021. The former Tanzania's Simba coach was last month appointed to lead Mauritania in their second consecutive AFCON appearance. Their first match is against the Gambia in Limbe next Wednesday.
Oh, vous savez, c'est difficile à dire, hein.
You know, it's hard to say. In football, anything can happen. Obviously, Algeria begins as favorites because they have not been beaten for years and they have achieved many good things. They are the defending champions, so Algeria and obviously Cameroon, since they are playing at home. After that, there are 3 or 4 other nations who are on a very high level and who can be part of the last 4, but I'm more interested in Mauritania, which has a football which is progressing very well, and we have to show it here at the Africa Cup of Nations.
Meanwhile, host Cameroon will kick off the tournament on Sunday against Group A rivals Burkina Faso at the Olembe Stadium on Sunday. The indomitable Lions players say they understand the pressure of playing at home.
The Africa Cup of Nations is a trophy that is very difficult to win. There are many teams that can win this trophy with players that play in the biggest clubs in Europe. So, necessarily winning it will be something magical.
Well, Bayern Munich striker Robert Lewandowski, Paris Saint-Germain forward Lionel Messi, and Liverpool's Mohamed Salah have been shortlisted for the best FIFA Men's Player Award. Lewandowski, who won the award in 2020, scored a Bundesliga record 41 goals in the 2020-21 season. Messi ended his wait for a major international trophy in 2021 when he helped Argentina win the Copa America. The 34-year-old also bagged his 7th Ballon d'Or trophy last month. Egypt striker Salah is the Premier League's top scorer this season with 16 goals. He is the reigning African Player of the Year and has led Egypt to qualifying for this year's African Cup of Nations. Well, that's it for this edition of Africa Live. Remember, you can send us your feedback to the contacts on the screen and follow us on digital media platforms. For the team, I'm Richard Nta saying thank you so much for watching, and Talk Africa is up next with Beatrice Marshall, and I'll see you again at the top of the hour with Sports Scene. Keep it here on CGTN.